Not many men, not most men, not a few men, but no man cometh unto the Father but by me. There are no exceptions, and that's about as absolute as you can get. We'd like to conclude by reading a letter received by Farrell Till. He's a former fundamentalist minister who publishes a newsletter that's very much like ours, entitled The Skeptical Review. I have a copy of it here in my hand. Ours, of course, is entitled Biblical Errancy. The writer said to Farrell, and I've talked to him many times on the phone, quote, "Both my wife and I were raised in conservative Christian homes during the 40s and 50s. Charles Fuller's old-fashioned revival hour was a regular in both our homes, as were the broadcasts of Donald Gray Barnhouse and many others. We met during our first year at the National Bible Institute and have been together ever since. I graduated from Gordon Theological Seminary and served strictly evangelical fundamentalist churches in both the Baptist and Presbyterian denominations. During those years, I preached the standard gospel message of the necessity of the new birth based on the foundation of an inerrant Bible. I gave altar calls, held evangelistic and missionary conferences, and sent young people to Christian camps. But despite all this, I became more and more concerned about the truth and validity of what I was saying and doing. To help quiet my ever-growing uneasiness, I decided to return to formal studies and eventually graduated from Westminster Theological Seminary with a master's degree in theology. 2 years later, I entered the doctorate program at the University of Nebraska and majored in ancient history. My hope was to find some way to bolster my sagging faith. I became a teaching fellow and was well on my way to a doctorate degree. But time was running out because I was losing faster in the faith department than I was gaining in the belief department. More knowledge about the Bible, Christian history, and other religions only made the situation worse. Now I could clearly see the fallacies, problems, cover-ups, denials, inconsistencies, exaggerations, and misrepresentations which I had only suspected existed. To her eternal credit, it was my wife who had the guts to say, this is the wife speaking, "This is crazy. You can stay in the church if you want, but count me out." Without her, I fear it would have taken me twice as long to do what should have been done years earlier. I resigned from my church, never again to pastor another church. Not only did I resign from my particular church, but we also left the entire Christian system behind. Have we ever regretted this decision? Never. Not once. I'll admit that for a while we didn't know what, if anything, to do about our beliefs, God, and other such things. But this should not be mistaken for sorrow for having left either the pastorate or the faith. We have never, at any time, been sorry for our decision. We feel free, unburdened, relieved, and happier than we have ever felt in our entire lives. Now we explore ideas, seek new realms, experience wisdom previously lost to us. We look at social, political, and spiritual issues in an entirely new way, invariably diametrically opposed to our old Christian views. As we consider the condition of today's evangelical church, see their tactics, listen to their logic, understand their agenda, and hear their rationalizations, we are indeed glad that we are no longer caught up in this mindset which had us, and he has had us in quotes, so powerfully at one time. We feel a close kinship to people like you and are glad someone is doing something to refute their claims, unquote. Farrell responded to this man's letter by saying in part, quote, "Again, we have personal testimony regarding the happiness and intense satisfaction that comes from breaking the shackles that enslave the mind to religious superstition and nonsense. In my debates," and Farrell often debates Christian fundamentalists, "the opposition continually charges that I have nothing to offer but doom and despair. But those who have been down the same road that I have traveled consistently testify to the tremendous joy and relief that accompany the abandonment of the ridiculous belief system that Christian fundamentalism represents." He used to be a Church of Christ minister. "I am pleased to publish this ex-preacher's story. Similar letters that we have published tell essentially the same story." And he got these from many different denominations, fundamentalist denominations. "A preacher begins to study higher criticism, world history, religious history, philosophy, and so forth, and eventually begins to see that he has been misled. Christianity is not a unique religion that God revealed in the first century. It's a patchwork of pagan beliefs containing not only fallacies and problems, but many other flaws that our ex-fundamentalists didn't mention." I can remember some myself that I received from Southern Baptist churches and elsewhere. Each letter like this makes me wonder how many other preachers are out there wallowing in misery and wanting to get out but not knowing how. And Farrell concludes by saying, "I've been where they are and I know what they're going through." That completes our presentation, and please join us later for the 41st edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary, when we'll continue showing why the Bible is nothing more than the flawed composition of some fallible human beings. Thank you for listening.